guys, today we're taking a look at my Mamiya C3. This cost me $100 used. When they were new in 1963 they cost $240. I bought this one on eBay or at some antique store. This one is cosmetically in good condition, but the film advance has some serious problems. It could be fixed, but it would probably cost a lot to fix it. In its current condition, it's probably worth about $100 on eBay. If it was repaired, it would be worth $200 on eBay, not even counting the lens. The personal significance is I bought one of these brand new in Japan when I was in the Navy in 1967. After taking the Navy Photographer's Mate class, I learned that the Mamiya C3 was the camera that Navy photographers were issued. I just had to have one. The one I bought at the Navy Exchange in Japan came with 3 lenses. These were made from 62 to 65, and the historical significance is they were unique in twin lens reflex cameras in that they accepted interchangeable lenses. They also had this optional pentaprism head, which they call a pyroflex, and they were used by the Navy, and they were used by many professional photographers, especially for wedding photography because of the large format. They took 120 roll film, not 220, and they have a removable back if you wanted a cut film attachment for single photographs, for instance, in a studio. Let's take a look at the camera top. Well, first let me remove this flash. This is just for decorative purposes. When I had mine, I had a similar flash arrangement like this. These optional handles were sold by Mamiya for the C3s. They came in real handy for holding a flash slightly off to the side. If we look at the top, it's predominant by this pentaprism head, which just has a simple screw on the back that you loosen up, and then you can pull it back a little bit, lift it up, and it comes off. Here's the waist level finder that you would get on one of these if you didn't have the optional head. And again, you just tighten the knob and you have it. If you pop up the waist level finder, you have a beautiful view. To help with focusing, there's a little magnifying glass, so you would look through there and get a good focus. If you wanted to use it for a straight viewfinder, you can put this wing down, and then you can look straight through the hole in the back to the hole in the front. And that'll work for a lot of cases, I suppose. We'll pop that back up, put this back down, and it folds up neatly like that. Let's take a look at the front. This is the cable release socket for standard screw-in cable releases. This is the shutter release mechanism, so this would be your shutter button. And this is where you cock the shutter on this side. So you cock it and fire the shutter like that. These are the 2 focusing knobs. They're locked to each other. This is the lens release catch, and it's locked right now. You can't do anything with it, and that's so that you don't accidentally remove the lens and mess up the roll of film that you might have in the camera. And we'll show you that in a second. This is the flash sync port, your PC port there, and this little knob with the red end on it is the flash sync setting. So this is the X sync for electronic flash, and this would be for flash bulbs. Back in that position, M sync and X sync. If we take a look at the left-hand side, we have a mounting strap for hanging this over your neck. I had one of those. This is the lens assembly release lock, and interestingly, even though it's the release lock, it's locked. So you can't unlock the lock until you can't unlock this until you unlock this. And here, this knob says lock and unlock. And that's how you would actually remove a lens. So first you have to turn this to unlock. And if you could hear, there's a big clunk inside when I do that. What it's doing is moving a big piece of felt that's covering the lens so that any film inside won't be exposed just because you have the front lens off. Now that I've turned it there, then we could turn this, push this one. It's not locked anymore, and that pushes a little pin in here that allows this lever to be released. So if I pop that lever off like that, you can remove the lens. Easy peasy. I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but there you can see the flapper that stops you from exposing your film. I can do that back and forth while we're here. It also puts a red flag in the viewfinder to warn you that if you tried to take a picture right now, it wouldn't actually take a picture because the film plane is blocked. And you can probably also see that through the viewfinder. I don't know if you can see that flag pop in there or not. Now let's put the lens back in. When I bought mine in Japan, it came with 3 lenses. So this mechanism just snaps in there, and if I turn this back, well, it automatically locked it now, and you can't get it open again. This is the take-up spool, and this is the supply spool. You don't do anything with these knobs except when you're loading it in the back. There's scales in here for distance scales, and there's 2 kinds of scales. So as you rack the focus out, because you have interchangeable lenses, the focus scale would be different for every lens. So you have a graph here to show you what the distance is for each lens. So for instance, this has a 135 millimeter lens, which you can barely read. They call that blue, but it's really gray colored. So that's this line right here. So right now it's focused for about 4 feet. And this scale I don't think is really all that accurate, because I tried it outside at infinity and it wasn't quite exactly in line with that. But the interesting thing is, unless you were doing studio work and you were measuring your distance, you would probably really never use the distance scale, because you would just focus the camera, set the shutter speed, f-stop, and take a picture. And you don't need to know the distance, because you can accurately focus through the waist level finder or the pentaprism head, either one. This scale down here is the exposure correction scale, and it's different for each lens. And the idea is, as you rack the lens way forward for like close-up work, what happens is, because the bellows is extending, even though you have a fixed aperture setting, for instance f4, and in fact this is an f4 or an f4.5 lens, the image will actually get slightly darker, so you have to compensate for that. So depending on which lens you have, and this indicator, there's a little line just above the knob there. So if you had and we have the 135 millimeter, we're in the 1.5 range here. So that means you would actually compensate 1.5 f-stops for the darkness that you've incurred by focusing out that far for a close-up, and the darkness that the bellows causes. Very strange. On the other side, there's another scale, distance scale. This one is only for the 80 millimeter and the 65 millimeter. The 80 millimeter would be the standard lens, the one that would be the closest to the equivalent of a 50 millimeter lens on a 35 millimeter camera. Again, we have another strap mount. We have a film counter window, which automatically counts the exposures. And then we have this little knob that's labeled sheet or multi-exposure or roll film. So in its current clockwise position, you can take multiple exposures. So as we were showing before, when I cock the shutter and take a picture, it's not advancing the film. So you could do double or triple exposures, or using a sheet film back like that. If I turn it to the other direction, it's a little knurled knob, and you cock the shutter. Then when I cock it again, well, it's going to make a liar out of me. It'll advance the film. It thinks it's a new roll of film. Cock the shutter, take a picture. Now if I cock the shutter again, it won't let me take a picture. It's doing a double exposure prevention. You have to advance it to the next frame of your photo. And in fact, the frame counter now says 2 in the little window, in the film counter window. On the camera bottom, there's a standard 1/4 by 20 tripod socket, and these 2 pins are to release and remove the camera back, and you would do that if you had a sheet film adapter and you wanted to take sheet film pictures instead of using 120 roll film. I'm going to rack this back so we can set it on its lens. So to open the back, you just push this little lever to the side. There's a little window here if you want to look at your film counter things, or I guess you could probably tell if there was film in there that way, but I never used it. So we open the back, and so here's where you would load the film. Now again, these knobs, you can pull them out to get the supply reel in, and you could pull it out to interchange the take-up reel. And it ain't easy, but it comes out. And it automatically sets the reset counter. Now, while we have it back here, you notice you can see the lens from the back. If I turn this knob to the lock position, the unlock position, to remove the interchangeable lenses, there's the flapper that goes down that stops the light from coming to the film plane so that you can remove a lens without ruining your roll of film. So if we close the back, it locks automatically. It resets the counter to 0. So in order to get to your first, and we're in the roll film mode, you would crank it until it gets to 1 and it'll stop automatically right there. You can back this off and there's a little hole here to reset that in. And now it's ready to take the first picture. But again, you have to manually cock the shutter and manually trigger it. So now if we tried to take another one, it won't let us. So we have to crank it to picture number 2, cock the shutter, take a picture, crank it to picture number 3, crank the shutter, take a picture, and so on. And once you get to 12, it'll automatically know that, and then when you crank it, it'll completely wind it into the container. They're beautiful cameras. I had a lot of fun with mine, and I had a lot of fun with the electronic flash. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.